Hi, Kevin Wright here, and we're back with another property finance tip for this week. Well, this week I'm going to revisit my most watched video that I recorded a couple of years ago about how to shrink your deposit to way less than 25%. Bit of a controversial video. I'm going to look at some of the comments that I've received on that, and I'm going to reinforce why it's possible to buy investment properties with less than 25% deposit. Interested in that? Keep watching. So a couple of years ago, I recorded a video, one of the first videos actually on this channel when I launched it way back in 2019. And I just thought I'd share with you at that time something that I've been doing consistently for several years before that. And that is sharing how we've been brokering, buying properties without needing a 25% deposit. Clearly I explained that you don't do this on every deal, but you have to have the right circumstances, in other words, the right seller, the right property, the right potential to make it work. But make it work, we consistently have been over the past 10 years. Here's a few of the comments that I got advertising this video. So you can see these dotted around the screen now. So I'm going to pick up on some of these comments, and here's the important thing to remember. We all see the world through the prism of our own beliefs. I'm not doubting for a minute the genuineness and the belief behind these comments, but I'm going to explain why these are misaligned with what I know to be the truth, based on the brokering that we've done now stretching back over the last decade. So on my advanced training, the Ninja Investor Program, I've been training investors how you can do these deals and how you don't need to put 25% down on every deal that you buy when the circumstances are right. And let me tell you, there's nothing new about this at all. Been doing this consistently since the last credit crunch back in 2008, 2009. How do we do this? It's by understanding that not every lender thinks about financing a deal the way that mortgage lenders do. Mortgage lenders only know one way to finance a deal. They base their mortgage on the lower of the purchase price or value. Now, I use simple numbers to explain this, like value is 100,000, purchase price 80,000. And of course I've got a lot of comments that saying, oh, I can't buy even a shed for 100,000 where I live. Well, of course that's true. There's some affluent parts of the UK where you could probably pay 300, 400,000 for a property. But it's indicative, not factual, when I do an explanation. So, if I say, a property's worth 100 and you can buy it for 80, if that doesn't work in your area, then okay, a property's worth 400 and you can buy it for 340, if that makes more sense to you. The premise is still the same. Buying a property for less than its true current value. Now, if you think I'm saying that every property owner marketing their property for sale is going to let it go for less than it's worth, that's absolutely not the case. For every property you see on Rightmove with 20, 30, 40 photographs of how wonderful their house is and how desirable their house is, then yes, those type of people are going to want the maximum they can get. And right now, the market is pretty buoyant for those type of properties. They're going to go at asking price. And over the last year, during the COVID lockdowns and after those, we've seen them not only going for asking price, but above asking price. So clearly we're not talking about those type of properties or those type of owners. And if we're not talking about those type of owners and properties, what are we talking about? We're talking about a very common term in property, which is called motivated sellers. Now, I did my first property deal way back in 1983, some 40 years ago. And guess what? I found a motivated seller. I found two sisters who wanted to sell their deceased parents' property. It was in a mess. It hadn't been touched for years. it needed a full refurb, and they just wanted to get rid of it to someone that was prepared to do the work that they didn't want to do. Do you know what? Nothing's changed. 40 years later, there are still people out there with dilapidated properties that don't want to do the work and just want to sell it to someone, not even for a knockdown price, although some want to do that. They just want to get rid of it. And hanging out for the highest price is not top of their agenda. If someone will come along and take this dilapidated property off their hands for a reasonable price, that gives them the outcome they want. They've decided they don't want to do the work. They've also decided they don't want to hang around for the next year, waiting to squeeze an extra few £1,000s out of the deal. Get what they consider to be a reasonable price, and they're happy to complete the transaction. These are the type of deals that I'm saying that it works, where you can shrink your deposit. So the first thing to understand is it's not going to happen on every deal. It's going to be a minority of properties and a minority of sellers, but a consistent and available minority that stood the test of time. And people were selling properties and buying property this way long before I got involved in property in the 1980s, and it's been consistently through that time, and it will be consistently available into the future as well. Nothing is going to change. There is always going to be a minority of sellers with a minority of properties that need work doing to them, and they will let them go at varying degrees of knockdown prices. And we've been brokering these year in, year out, certainly for the last 10 years. Now, the way I funded my first deal way back in 1983 is different to how you'd fund them now. So the relevant thing is, how can you do deals like this today in the 21st century, not how I did them back in the 20th century. And I said a few minutes ago that mortgage lenders always base their mortgage on the lower of the purchase price or the value, but not every lender does that. Who looks at it differently? Bridging lenders look at it differently, and not even every bridging lender, just what I describe as market value bridging lenders. What makes these different is they're not fixed to the purchase price. They're happy to lend on the value. In fact, the lower of not the purchase price or the value, but the asking price or the value. And that one single fact determines the size of the deposit. So if you've got a property with a market value and an asking price of 100, and you can buy it for 80, a market value bridger will lend based on that 100,000 value, not that 80. I'm picking up on the different areas of the UK with higher values. If the market value and the asking price is 400, but you can buy it at 320 or 340, a market value bridger is going to ignore the purchase price and lend on that asking price or value. So that's the key difference here, is that we're talking about properties that don't fly off the shelf because they're not in perfect condition. There's something unattractive about them. It may be a commercial property that's vacant and needs a change of use. Not going to get a mortgage on that, but you would get a bridging loan. More commonly, it's a property that's seen better days, that hasn't really been touched in the last 20 or 30 years. It's very dated. No one wants to live in a property like that right now. So buy it, refurb it, improve it, bring it up to 21st century standards, and then you can either sell it or refinance it at the uplifted value and make your profit that way. Nothing new about this, nothing exceptional about this. It's been happening consistently throughout time, and for the last decade as brokers we've been funding these projects using market value bridging. So there you have it. I thought it was worth revisiting my most popular video in terms of views and in terms of comments, just to give it a fresh angle to say, hey, what I was talking about 2 years ago, it's just as valid today. I'll be back next week with another property finance video. Before you go, hang around, got something else I want to show you. If you enjoyed watching this video, did you know every Monday morning at 8:30 I do a live Facebook Q&A. So if you want to start the week with checking out some answers to your property finance questions, click the link here.